Halloween Horror Nights is one of the largest Halloween events in the world and has been an exciting guest for over 30 years with its various mazes, live shows, and scare zones. Coming from humble beginnings in the early 90s and growing into a juggernaut of a franchise, with events being held in Orlando, Hollywood, Singapore, and Japan. More recently, Universal opened Universal Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas, which is the first time Universal is expanding the franchise with a permanent year-round horror experience. HHN is a really special event for so many people and has a very large, ever-growing fan base. I've been going to the event for over 10 years now, and I'm always excited to see what the creative team is cooking up. The atmosphere is top-notch, and even though crowds may be growing and prices keep going up, Horror Nights will always be my #1 priority when it comes to the haunt season. With the event just kicking off, I thought there'd be no better time to discuss the history of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Orlando and Hollywood. In order to properly discuss the history of HHN, we have to go back to the year of 1986. Universal Studios Hollywood took a page out of Knott's book and was set to open their very first Halloween event. Knott's at the time was successfully running their Halloween event for 14 years. Fall is usually a slow time in the theme park industry, so it was a great way to get people in the park and raise those ticket sales. Thus, Halloween Horror Nights was born, at least in title. The 1986 event was a far cry from the HHN we know today. The main feature of the event was the Terror Tram, which was the regular tram route but with scare actors scattered hiding in the shadows waiting to pop out. Tragedy would strike the event when 20-year-old scare actor Paul Rubaldes fell between the tram cars while scaring guests and was crushed to death. This would obviously cause a lot of bad PR for the event, and some sources say this is why Universal stopped the event at Hollywood, but others say it was due to low attendance numbers. A few years later, in 1990, Universal Studios Florida would open, and Universal was already considering bringing a haunt event to the park to drive attendance during their fall season. In 1991, Fright Nights would premiere at the park on 3 select nights, October 25th through 26th, and of course Halloween. Like I said, early Knott's Berry Farm was already decades into refining and crafting their haunt event, and it's clear to me that the team was heavily inspired by them. The event would feature shows and creatures throughout the park, and one house called the Dungeon of Terror would be located in the Jaws queue. And for those of you who don't know, Jaws had terrible technical issues, partly due to poor construction, so they had to close the ride to completely redo it. It was closed for like 2 years. The house would allow guests to, quote, watch as a cast of madmen and monsters wreak havoc and mayhem within the walls of the dungeon's dark, dark depths, a weird, winding, wicked asylum of mutants and maniacs. It was kind of similar to the House of Horrors in a way, with a dark, medieval-esque, spooky dungeon with various horror characters, and it was almost like they crammed a bunch of houses into one, which works because they only had one at the event. Descriptions and documentation on the house is fairly limited, but we have a fairly good idea of what guests would experience. After entering through the Amityville area and waiting in an insanely long line, guests would make it to the front of the castle where lit torches and a woman in a cage adorn its outer walls. Scare actors would sit at the top of the castle and harass the guests below. The first part of the maze was completely dark, with you having to feel the slimy walls of the castle to find your way out. A scare actor was in this section yucking slime at those who passed him, and the entire house was kept almost too dark and did a lot of things, according to rumors, that Horror Nights would never do today, like swinging doors that would accidentally whack people in the face and walls that would close in on guests. This is where it gets a little bit fuzzy, but there was a ton of random scenes, like a swampy area where gillmen would pop out of the water at guests, and the house featured both the Xenomorph and Predator, Chucky, the Invisible Man, the Phantom of the Opera, and Hannibal Lecter. The coolest room in my opinion, and most iconic, was the Rat Lady room. Guests would walk into a dark room with a glass floor, and the lights in the room would flash on and off, and underneath your feet, the Rat Lady, surrounded by live rats, would be scratching and screaming at the people passing by. The Rat Lady became a very iconic part of Horror Nights in the future, being featured at the event multiple times throughout the years. There was also apparently a large meat grinder that would almost chase after guests, and everything about this house is just insane, and it's no wonder that Fright Nights would be a huge success at the park, with the house getting lines up to 3 hours during its first year. Speaking of Knott's inspiration, the event had a show located in the Beetlejuice Theater called Dr. Frankenstein's Theater, featuring the Mistress of the Dark, Dracula, and Frankenstein. This is incredibly similar to the Seymour shows at Knott's, with a ghoul host watching old horror movies and doing bits with the audience. And if you want to know more about Knott's history, which kind of goes hand in hand with HHN history, watch my video by clicking the little icon above. Another notable show was that Paul Revere and the Raiders performed on the stage behind Mel's Drive-In, and there was 2 Beetlejuice shows, one being a standard comedy kind of Bill and Ted style show called Beetlejuice Graveyard Tours, and the other was Beetlejuice Dead in Concert featuring the Ghostbusters, where Beetlejuice and the Ghostbusters would go back and forth doing parodies of various various songs. The event was incredibly polished and well put together for its first year, and would return again the following year, reclaiming its name of Halloween Horror Nights, with it officially being called Halloween Horror Nights 2, also starting the numbering system which would become famous with the Orlando event. HHN 2 would feature a refined and upgraded version of the Dungeon of Terror, now made much safer with a lack of face-smashing doors, and the second maze would be based around the people under the stairs. A highlight of the year would be Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure, and for those of you who don't know, Bill and Ted shows are like parody variety comedy shows that would tackle various pop culture topics that happen within the year. These shows are so beloved by the community, and if I'm going to make a parallel to Knott's, this is very similar in a way to the Hanging Show. Bill and Ted shows are very important to Halloween Horror Nights. They were kind of a vital part of the event for 26 years. Horror Nights 2 would expand the amount of nights that the event would run for, and like the previous year, it was another hit, so Universal was ready to do it again. Back in Hollywood, seeing the success of Orlando's event, they would attempt to revive Halloween Horror Nights on the West Coast, and there was no scare zones this year, but two mazes. One was the Maze of Maniacs, which was like an insane asylum theme maze, and the other was Nightmare Alley, which we don't have much info on, but it seemed to be kind of loosely themed and featuring various monster movies. The event would also see the return of the Terror Tram, and for some reason it also wasn't a success, and they would have to shelve the idea in Hollywood for the time being, but back in Orlando, 1993 saw the event expand further with a 7-night event and an added third haunted house, which was actually based on Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. The Psycho Path maze, located at the Psycho set area of the park, which was originally built for the terrible film Psycho 4: The Beginning, would take guests through the Bates Motel as Norman Bates tries to give you the old mommy treatment. The rest would see a huge boom and expansion for the event year after year, with it becoming better and better, adding new houses and shows to attract guests year after year. The 90s for HHN Orlando alone could be its own history video, which I'm planning on doing this season. This video is just kind of an overview of the entire event, so bear with me. 1994 would see the actors officially called scare actors for the first time, as well as the first official scare zone, which was called Horrorwood, and that didn't really have a solid theme. Two new mazes would be added to the event, one replacing the Psychopath maze, which was the Boneyard, another insane asylum themed maze that featured two separate paths that offered different experiences, and Hell's Kitchen, which was themed around demonic butchers in New York. All the scare actors at the event this year would undergo the very first Ghoul School, which was used to teach newcomers the way of the scare. The next year would feature the Crypt Keeper from Tales of the Crypt, and he was kind of the beginning of the idea of the event having icons, with him getting both a maze and a show featured at that year's event. The Crypt Keeper's Dungeon of Terror saw guests walking through his large spooky mansion, and the Rat Lady would actually make an appearance here. Other mazes that year featured mutants invading a New York subway in Terror Underground, Transit to Torment, and the Universal House of Horror featuring classic Universal monsters. In 1997, once again Universal would bring the event back to Hollywood, which would have a much better run than all the previous attempts. There was some really cool stuff here, like the creature from the Black Lagoon's Monster Aquariums, which utilized the Waterworld stunt show to make a very creative original concept where you're kind of walking around this spooky aquatic aquarium. This would feature scare actors and animatronics submerged in aquariums, and some of the scare actors would actually be in water, which is something I don't think they would ever do today at Horror Nights. The highlight of this maze was a large kraken that was a fully animated animatronic. I know I'm gonna have an impossible time finding footage for this, so we'll see. I might just be putting up pictures of like The Shape of Water or something. The Crypt Keeper had a maze featuring modern horror movie monsters, and there was a maze themed around Area 51. Bill and Ted would also make their first appearance on the West Coast, bringing the show's same kind of wacky antics to just a different audience. This year seemed really creative and brought a lot of visitors to the park, making them a little bit more confident that they could pull off Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood. The following year, 1998, they would bring the event back, and this saw the very first horror retheming of Waterworld with Slaughterworld, a latex gimp suit sexified gory show that is completely unrelated to Waterworld at all, and Clive Barker would come to the event to design his own maze with Clive Barker's Freaks. This was his take on like a freaky freak show, and a lot of the art I can find from it seems like it was actually pretty cool. The Crypt Keeper would be back again with a similar maze from last year, this one being called Crypt Keeper's Screening Room, and another maze would be themed around an alien assault, which would see guests being abducted into a spaceship, and based off the few photos I could see of it online, it seems very alien encounter coded, which is pretty cool. Other highlights of the year include Chucky's Wedding Chapel, where you'd watch him get married to Tiffany, and there was weirdly also like a Kiss tribute band that would perform there. That's pretty sick. The next year would see Clive Barker returning again to the event, this time taking guests into his version of Hell, which actually looked very, very metal. Rob Zombie would also have a maze themed around his album Hillbilly Deluxe. Cleaver's Meat Locker was another maze that would be themed around like a cannibalistic meat locker with scary butcher people. And Bill and Ted and Chucky would return, with Chucky getting a different show with Chucky's Insult Emporium, where he would just roast people. That's pretty much it. And he was pretty brutal back in the day. They've had to tone this down over the years. It's actually a fairly big controversy with HHN. I think it was like a Purge announcer lady that really caused all of this to crumble down. But back in the day, they used to have scare actors that would talk, and it was fairly fun. And Chucky, even nowadays, they had to really nerf his show. But back in the day, he was throwing out some pretty deep cuts. He was really frying people. 2000 would be the last year for Hollywood before it took a 6-year hiatus, which still doesn't make sense to me. Halloween Horror Nights was doing fairly well, but I guess they needed a little break. People online say this was due to them just trying to refine the event a little bit, but I really doubt that this would take them 6 years to figure out. There must have been some other reason, maybe budgeting, or it just didn't make sense for them logistically. But 2000 had mazes themed around WWE's The Undertaker, Buffy the Vampire Slayer / Angel, I guess, The House of a Thousand Corpses, and an original maze by Clive Barker called Harvest, which was about a parasitic monster that ate people in order to multiply. Forgot to mention that these years didn't have a Terror Tram, which my guess is due to it not feeling like it was fully fleshed out, or also just the fact that the Terror Tram is kind of a logistical issue to begin with. Even today, they can't run the Terror Tram after 11 because of the local neighborhood around Universal, so I can see why they were kind of like, maybe it's not worth it. Going back to Orlando, and I hope you guys don't have whiplash because we're jumping back and forth here, but going back to Orlando, the era of Horror Nights icons is about to begin, with 2000 bringing the very first official fleshed out HHN icon, Jack the Clown. Jack was made to be a recognizable face to further drive the growing community that was forming at the event. The Maze Fear House that year would give us a look not to the backstory of Jack, but a view into his nemesis, Dr. Oddfellow, mad scientist who took over a funhouse and I guess hangs out with evil clowns or something. Jack was pretty quickly loved by guests, and this gave Universal the confidence to go forward with implementing the icons even more throughout the event. 2001 saw the team creating their second original icon with Eddie, Jack's deranged chainsaw-wielding, horror movie-obsessed brother. After the September 11 attacks, they thought the more darker and grittier tone of Eddie was inappropriate, so they very quickly brought Jack back. They were already so far into planning that year that there was just a weird amount of chainsaws for no reason. This was supposed to be tied into Eddie, but of course they didn't use them, so yeah, just a ton of chainsaws. Highlights of that year for me is Run, a maze themed around a deadly Wipeout Running Man-esque game show, and Scary Tales, which is themed around an abandoned, twisted amusement park. 2002 would see the event go to Islands of Adventure with the Islands of Fear, and this year is insane, and I think maybe merits its own video. Originally, the icon was going to be Cindy, a little demonic girl who casts demonic entities across the islands, but due to a string of child abductions at the time, Universal quickly once again switched the icon and created the Caretaker, a spooky graveyard keeper who lives and resides at Shady Oak Cemetery. With Marvel's Superhero Island being within the park, Universal would get a bit wild with the theming, and guests would be walking through a Marvel universe where all the heroes were killed by a group of villains led by Carnage. This story ties in directly with the original maze Maximum Carnage, which famously featured a dead Captain America and Wolverine hanging from the rafters. This caused Marvel Comics to be kind of angry with Universal, so they definitely would stop doing that for the years going forward. Other highlights include a Jurassic Park themed scare zone that has a concept that is kind of similar to the unused idea for Jurassic Park 4, featuring weird dinosaur hybrid people. And of course, who could forget Shrieks and Foons, which is like an even more fucked up version of that kids show from Spy Kids. There's just something so sticky and awful about the design of these guys, and I kind of love it and I also kind of hate it. There's something so gross about this scare zone to me. This was a kind of insane, crazy year for sure. 2003 would see the introduction of The Director, a deranged snuff film director who in lore was hired by Universal Orlando to shoot his next film at the park, making his guests a part of his next horrific masterpiece. He would be featured in his own maze, All Night Die-In, themed around an abandoned drive-in where we become a part of his twisted vision. 2004 would see them using both Universal Orlando and Islands of Adventure for the event, and highlights include Halloween Horror Night Nightmares, a house that's kind of like the Avengers of icons icons featuring Jack, his brother Eddie, the Caretaker, and the Director. Splitting Horror Nights into 2 parks seemed to kind of hurt the quality a little bit, and also it would cost Universal way more money to keep both parks open. I can't imagine trying to walk through this. There were houses that were exclusively in Islands of Adventure and houses that were also in Universal. If you're trying to walk around and do everything that night, it would be atrocious. I cannot imagine. I don't think it's even possible for them to do this now, but would you guys like to see them bring it back to Islands of Adventure? Imagine what Horror Nights would be like at Epic Universe or something. It'd be pretty cool. 2005 would see the introduction of the Storyteller, a demonic old woman who weaves powerful stories that cause a real world terror. Her backstory is, it's just wild. Apparently she ate a demon as a child and it made her crazy. She like kills her parents and goes wild or something like that. I don't know. Again, Orlando people, forgive me. I'm trying my best here. She basically has the power to write scary stories and have them come to life. And she writes the story of Terra, the Queen of Terror, who is like this godlike creature that feeds on blood through ritualistic sacrifices. The event would go back to the main park in 2006 with Halloween Horror Nights Sweet 16. This would be a birthday celebration for its 16th year, bringing back all of the original icons in their own houses and shows. This year's goal was to do sequel and prequel mazes of past year's houses and refine the story on all the icons. Psychoscarapy Maximum Madness told the backstory of Jack the Clown. All Night Die and Take Two was the continuation of the Director, throwing us into various horror films. Scream House The Resurrection was the sequel to the original Scream House, with guests facing the Caretaker's various cults. Dungeon of Terror Retold was the story of the Storyteller purchasing the old Dungeon of Terror maze that was actually from the old Halloween Horror Nights and taking over the actors and props and just causing chaos. Back in Hollywood, the team was ready to bring back Halloween Horror Nights to the park, with John Murdy leading the charge as creative director. They would take inspiration from the icons at Orlando and bring the Director to Hollywood. Yes, we actually had an Orlando icon in Hollywood at one point. The storyline went that Universal couldn't find directors like Clive Barker or Rob Zombie anymore, so they turned towards infamous director Pavel Parnavinsky to helm the event. There was really only one maze this year, with the Asylum located in the Shrek Ford EQ, which was themed around, you guessed it, an asylum, and the Universal House of Horrors was also open as it was year-round. They would finally bring back the Terror Tram with the Terror Tram Director's Cut, which is themed around guests being bussed in for an audition with the director, walking through his various horrific sets on the backlot. 2007 would be the beginning of the IPs taking over the event, which is something that is both great and also not so great. Stepping into the world of your favorite horror movies is awesome, but on the flip side, it can also be an easy way for Universal to cut corners and use props they've already made. The Walking Dead trend of the 2010s at HHN got old so fast. Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw, and Friday the 13th would appear in 2007 on both coasts, and Orlando would focus more on original houses, and they kinda still do to this day, albeit a little bit less than they used to. Hollywood decided to completely drop the idea of any original mazes and just exclusively do IP ones for the time being, with a couple of originals being sprinkled in throughout. Unlike Orlando, Hollywood didn't really have the same cult fan following yet, and really just banked on recognizable characters to draw people in. The early 2010s would see the event on both coasts grow into their own, becoming the largest horror event in the world. Nobody had the budget and resources and scale that Universal had. 2010 marked the 20th anniversary of the event in Orlando, and to celebrate, they brought back all the icons that were there, led by Adaru as Sumerian god of fear. This year was really cool because they were actually really celebrating the past of Horror Nights. They understood now, hey, we got this kind of franchise with characters and lore, and people are really enjoying this stuff, so they made a house that would actually celebrate the history of Horror Nights past, bringing people through recognizable sets and props from years prior. 2011 would see Hollywood doing an original house themed around Latin American legend La Llorona. This would be the beginning of John Murdy creating a ton of original mazes based around the various monsters and ghosts of Latin American folklore, and these mazes have always kind of been the best part of every year they're featured in. It's kind of like a tradition now for us at Hollywood. In the big spooky year of 2012, we would see the beginning of the Walking Dead apocalypse, with the property coming to both coasts. At the time, The Walking Dead was at the top of the world when it came to TV dramas, and people were genuinely excited to step into the world of Rick and his silly friends. As time went on though, it seemed like, at least on the Hollywood side, the quality of these houses would kind of diminish. And after a while, the whole theme of The Walking Dead just kind of gets repetitive. It's like, how much of the zombie infected streets of Atlanta, Georgia do I really want to see? Orlando seemed to have a little bit more fun with the property. They would do like roaming hordes of like walkers walking through the park, which I thought was pretty fun. 2 years later, in 2015, we saw the return of Jack the Clown to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the event. And this year was really something special, with Jack taking over pretty much every aspect, with multiple shows and mazes dedicated to the spooky clown guy. I remember wishing I could go to this year so bad. It just looked incredible and huge. It was like really like a big celebration. I felt like I was missing out so much. That level of community is really cool. It seems like this year kind of Art the Clown is like a unofficial icon of the year, but I really wish like Hollywood and even Orlando would get back into doing icons. I think it's just so much fun. Like a story to tie everything together just makes it feel all the more cohesive and all the more put together. It's really cool to be like a part of something. A fun tradition that we do have in Hollywood is the chainsaw chase out, where every night around 1:30, all the chainsaw actors from around the park come to the front to kick everyone out. It's a big ceremony and a tradition for many fans of the event, and it's really fun. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. I know you have to stay up very late to see it, but it's very cool. The 2010s would be the biggest decade yet for both coasts, with the event growing into something bigger than ever before. Community having wider access to connect through social medias, and the trends and traditions becoming kind of like little viral memes kind of became like a big thing that brought a lot of people to the event. Like pizza fries, the food, everything is like now a thing that people really want and really talk about. It's all official now. It's mainstream. It's no longer this weird little thing that a few people on forums talk about. Horror Nights is easily the largest and most popular theme park event, with millions of people flocking to it on both coasts every year. The sets, the attention to detail, the atmosphere, the food, the shows, the icons, the lore, the community, all of it just makes for an event that is just so much fun to keep coming back to every year. It really is a staple of so many people's Halloween season, and I can't imagine fall or Halloween without it. I truly love this event so much. It's actually what started me making YouTube videos, and I would report and do news about Horror Nights. I love it so much, and some of you guys know that. Anyway guys, though, that is the end of the video today. Kind of, brief overview. We're going over the history, kind of giving you the important pieces so you don't, otherwise this video would maybe be like an hour or something. But anyway guys, haunt season has started. I'll be going to Horror Nights in Knott towards the end of September, so expect a lot of content from me coming forward. I think I'm still going to be covering haunts going through September and October, just kind of really digging my teeth into it. Also saving some of the other theme park stuff for the time that it's not spooky season. But expect videos from me, like maybe even in-park videos of me at Horror Nights, at Knott. We're really gonna go all in this year. I got multiple dates planned out, so I'm really excited to, talk with you guys, kind of get into the nitty-gritty. We're gonna have a big discussion. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But anyway guys, comment below, let me know, how long have you been going to Halloween Horror Nights? What does Halloween Horror Nights mean to you? What's like maybe your favorite maze from the last couple of years? I want to know about it. This video was super long compared to some of my other videos, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. You're the best. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Please hit that notification bell. If you're a subscriber, keep coming back. Keep watching the show. Tell your friends about it. Say like, hey, yo, this guy is really weird and makes awesome videos. You should really check them out. They're dope. But anyway, guys, I'll stop rambling. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. Bye-bye.